but I really do believe that we are kind of hardwired to make excuses. And so while I'm giving everybody out there an excuse, our natural tendency is to save energy.
Welcome to 10X Your Team with Cam and Otis. We're a father-son leadership podcast where we talk with other lifelong learners about making an impact and solving big problems. And those of you who listen to the show regularly will know that I emphasized a different word just then because I was listening to a show earlier this morning, and when you hear yourself, you're like, dang, Otis, why are you emphasizing that word? I don't know, because, I caught myself doing this other thing during the intro where I'd start out with my left hand here, and about halfway through the intro, I'd put my left hand here, like I'm doing some sort of dance move. And, it's one of those things. And the beauty of doing a podcast and putting it out on the YouTube is I get to see how silly I look in some instances and decide whether or not I want to continue to look silly in those instances and opportunities. Camden, have you done some analysis? Because I'm watching you and I'm not 100% sure you're doing your performance analysis.
Oh, wow. Okay. Well, okay. Shots fired, first of all. But I was going to say, and I just accidentally did something that you caught me on early on in our days, which is I would stand like this. I put my arms behind my back like this, kind of make my shoulders disappear a little bit. So I'm doing that right now for some reason. I broke that habit. But no, you had me thinking more so. Do you know where it catches me a lot? Because I'll listen to the podcast occasionally. I go through the clips, so I generally won't go through an entire episode just because I spend so much time in the clips. But do you know what drives me crazy? I'll see pictures of me coaching rugby. And just these weird stances. I go like this a lot. And like stuff like that. I just have these weird hand positions where I'm just focused on the game. And it's like, why the hell it looks like I'm picking my nose, all this stuff. It's just not good. And then it's like the last thing you want to be thinking about while you're coaching the game is what the guy taking the pictures of you is looking at, right? That just feels like the wrong approach there. So I'll throw that back to you, Dad. You analyze it, but then you don't want to be just worrying about how you look. You want to be worried about your performance, right?
You do. And that's where you have to make that choice and just say, you know what, if somebody thinks I look foolish doing what I'm doing, then so be it. And I'll just be who I am and not worry about that. Which really gets me to our guest, Michael Johnson. Michael, man, how you doing today?
I'm doing great. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you so much for having me on your show.
Yeah, and I might have done a little bit of Freudianness in my intro after reading a bit about you and the ballroom dancing and choreography of the business. Love the play on words there, my friend. But I really want to get into what the heck's a professional ballroom dancer? Could you, I mean, football, soccer, rugby, hockey.
Well, I was going to say, I picture is when you go to like the honky tonk bars and they got those like two girls that know all the line dances that like teach everybody. Is it like that, Michael?
Not even close. Not even close. I actually started dancing when I was 5. My mother couldn't afford a babysitter, and so she took me with her to her college dance class that she was taking, and so I'd take all of my toys. But inevitably, in that first semester that she started taking dance, the college kids thought I was one of their toys. And so next thing you know, by the end of the semester, I'm like dancing around. I didn't know any better and just thought that was just what I was there to do. By the time I was 10, I knew all the dances. My mother was a very ambitious woman, so she actually opened a studio by that time as well. So not only had she learned to dance, but she kind of took over that community and took over the college community and then opened a studio for the community. So by the time I was 13, she had me teaching the beginning classes, and she was my TA. And so I started teaching at a really young age. And of course, the college kids don't care who's teaching them. They just are there. And it was part of what they were doing. It was part of their requirements to go to the studio and take a class and experience it outside of a college setting. And so they'd show up and I'd get to teach, and next thing you know, I was doing that. Now, I certainly didn't think I was going to be a professional at that point. I thought I was going to be a professional basketball player. And that was my thing. But I danced because it came easy and I didn't think anything of it. But by the time I got to my senior year, I'd already gotten cut from the basketball team my junior year. Or sorry, going into my senior year, I thought I was going to be a starter, and then they cut me over the summer. Kind of devastated my life. And
yeah, it would.
it was
You've been
crazy.
working up to that for 3 years, and you thought, finally this
Here
year,
it
right?
is.
That's it. Yeah. And I was a starter all of the 3 years. And so going into that senior year to get cut was sort of like, I just wasn't even expected. But I found out that a college would give me a scholarship, which I thought I was going to get from basketball, to play or to dance. And I thought, holy cow, who would have thought there was money out there for college? They paid for my whole college. I ended up getting scholarships every year of college, and got a full ride the whole time. And I got to travel all over the world. By the time I graduated from college, I had visited 13 countries and most of the US, danced all over, and then did well enough and won enough in that amateur ranks that the world champions asked me to come and teach at their studio. And so it just kind of kept going, and it went in the right direction. Ended up dancing on the circuit, which you can imagine is like the golf circuit with no money. So, you dance on the circuit because you love it, and you teach because you need to earn money. And so I was a verse teacher from when I was young, and kept teaching, earned a great living as a ballroom teacher, and then competed all over the world as a pro for about 10 years. Ended up marrying my partner, who's my wife. And then we retired after 10 years. We just got tired. And but during the middle of that, I took a left turn at Albuquerque. And
By the way, I am a Bugs Bunny fan. I grew up with Saturday morning Bugs Bunny cartoons.
you caught my reference.
Oh yeah.
Yes, 100%, 100%.
Most people don't. My business partner doesn't have every time I say that, she's like, why are you saying that?
Every time I make that left on the I-25, it's south of Albuquerque, but I pretend every single time driving up to Colorado.
So midway through, I was winning as an amateur, turned pro, and hit the brick wall, as so many amateurs and collegiate competitors do. You get in the pro ranks, and all of a sudden you suck. I went from being the top of the heap to being the absolute bottom. And for the first year, I thought, fine, I'll just be patient. I'm not getting anywhere. And the second year, it was like, something is wrong with me. I thought I was good. And as I entered into the third year of dancing pro, I'm thinking, this cannot be the way. There's something incredibly wrong with me. And so I took up learning about personal development, and I just fell in love with trying to figure out how the human brain worked, and started getting every certification under the sun. Primarily, I got a life coaching certification back in the days when everybody laughed and pointed their finger when I said I was a life coach. They went, ha, 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 ha. It wasn't cool back then. And then I got certified as an neurolinguistic programmer. So that was kind of fun. And during that time, and really 100% of it was all selfish. I was just trying to figure out how to break through the wall. And during that third year, we finally figured out what was going on. And most of it was between the ears, and we finally broke through, started making the finals, started getting back into our winning fashion again, and then we had a fairly decent run for the remainder of our days before we realized, hey, it's time to have kids. But in the meantime, I had started this coaching business. Back then, it wasn't cool, right? It wasn't cool to have a mental health coaching business. There was nothing surrounding that said that was okay. But I did it anyway, and I figured someday my body's not going to participate with me being a professional dancer, and I don't want to depend on that. So I built that business up, And that was kind of the beginning of how I started transitioning into business and bringing that to light. But it was really just, so totally selfish. I had to figure out how to get back to winning again, because I had done a number to my brain.
Talking about the mental space of the performance there's something really interesting I'd love to dive in a little bit on, which is you talk about teaching that college class. Dad, we talk about one of the hardest things as a leader is being a leader of your peers. You weren't just leading peers. You're a 13-year-old boy leading cute little college girls, right? You're doing that thing. That's got to be a whole different kind of mind space. Did you feel yourself like struggle with that at the time? Or was it like you were blind to it
100%. I found myself all the way into college and teaching in college to my correct age peers. I was a teacher coming in straight away, but 100% felt not good enough. I shouldn't be here. Everybody teaching were the older people. I was always trying to teach up. I was always trying to prove something, always trying to be more and act like I was more. I was an old soul. I was an only child, and my mother was a single mom. And it just was sort of what I had to do. I had to be old enough to hang with the older crowd. And that kind of forced that. But it was a rough run, because I was always trying to prove something. I was always trying to prove that I was a good enough teacher, and I was good enough to be teaching the people older than me. And it took a long time to sort of balance that out. And it wasn't really till the back end of my college career, after teaching people my same age, that it finally started to balance out.
Could you talk about that specific aspect of the mindset of trying to prove yourself? Because I think that's one where a lot of people, we talk about the spectrum of healthy versus unhealthy motivations. A lot of people put proving yourself on the healthier end of that, but there's some downsides there as well. Could you talk about what your experience was with that?
Yeah, it's interesting because it affects your language. It affects your actions, how you stand, how you engage with other people. And it was really a heavy weight to bear. When you think you're not good enough, it really does a number on you, because you will find evidence from your past, because that's what we do. When you start looking for things, you can find it. And so you'll find evidence from your past that you weren't good enough. And then you'll find evidence about right now where you're at that you're not good enough. And then we as humans do this really jacked up thing, and we'll start looking ahead into the future of things that haven't happened, aren't true. Who knows what direction we could go? And we'll start using that as evidence that we're also not good enough. And I to this day, and I love note cards. I still like writing with a pen. I guess I'm old school, but I have note cards all over my desk. I'll even make little
Michael,
things.
it's a safe space, Dad. You can show you.
That's it. And I mean, I still even have these little cut-ups, these little teeny things, right, that I just keep here, and they can move around on my desk, because if they move around, I have to touch them. I have to move them to do things, so it makes me read them rather than them being stagnant, and then you go blind to it. And you guys out there listening, please take this if it helps you. I will always be enough. I am enough. I have always been enough. And that's it. And there's so much evidence. And when you start looking at it that way, there's so much evidence to prove it. I'm here. I'm here right now talking to you guys, two really cool cats that allowed me to have a venue to come and just say, hey, all of you listening, you are enough. And there's proof because you're here listening. And if you start looking for that proof, you will find it. And ultimately, when I was teaching dance, or whether I'm teaching business now with consulting or any of my businesses that I've invested in, it doesn't matter, because those thoughts still creep in. It's so easy to get into that place of, oh man, how am I going to make it this month? How am I going to make it? That project just failed. We just lost all this money. How am I going to make it through this space? And you start getting into this place of looking for evidence of how you're not going to make it through, and you can find it. It'll be there. It'll show up and it'll present itself. But likewise, if you just remind yourself, I am enough and I have always been enough. Always, because I'm here right now and I'm doing this right now. So I've always been enough. So there's plenty of proof for that. And therefore, I can extrapolate that I will be enough. So as the challenges come and as they present themselves, we will easily be enough. And all of you guys out there listening, you will be. And it's hard not to try to be more than you are. And we have this tendency to want to be more than we are. So we talk to people and we act more than we are. And I know it. I'm 100% familiar with it, having started teaching at 13. You get really familiar with trying to be more than you are. And the funny part is that all those people I was trying to do that for all looked back at me and they knew I was trying to be more than I was. And they just went, "Oh, he's just a cute kid trying to be an
Pat you
adult."
on the head.
Yeah, they just go, "Cute kid," right? All of my business mentors, I know they look back at me and they just go, "Well, you're a cute guy. As soon as you figure out that next level, oh, cute guy." Right? That's not about age anymore. It's just about what we've done and what we've accomplished. There's always, what is it, Star Wars? There's always a bigger fish, right?
So, yeah, it took me a minute to remember that because I'm not exactly a
that's the prequels. That's not yours as much. That's mine.
Yeah, I mean, which ones
That's
are
for
the
you,
prequels and all that sort of stuff? I can't keep track of that. But at risk of going down some sort of Jabba the Hutt story, or Obi-Wan, or
Cousin Ewan.
Yeah.
Or actually, no. See, you don't even know that. That's Cousin Ewan's the new ones. It's not Cousin Ewan the old ones. I don't know who the heck plays Obi-Wan in those. But all right, sorry, tiptoeing around the rabbit hole. Sorry.
Yeah, what I'd like to discuss, Michael, is there's a really interesting thing that goes on, and where the choice is made in the I'm not good enough, so I need to read another book. Or I'm not good enough, so I'm not even going to do it. Or even the thing that I've run across with my own military experience, the way I was brought up, and guys that I work with that are veterans and have the same mental attitude of, well, I can't do it until I do another certification or course or book or whatever. Could you talk to us about that struggle that you went through? Well, I'm not good enough, but if I work really hard and read all these books, then maybe I will be.
Yeah. It's an interesting direction. That statement that you made is so common, and we use it as an excuse. And to kind of lean towards your military background, again, I've never been in the military. My family isn't a military family at all, but I am fascinated by those shows where they show like SEAL training and the Ranger training, or the military from overseas and how they train to be special ops. I've watched every single one of them. That doesn't make me an expert by any means, but I love the training side of it. And in so many instances, in every one of those trainings, one of the things that I see so often is that they are working to get rid of your ability to use excuses not to do things. And they train that into you. They train it into you through lots of different exercises, lots of different challenges where you get used to, instead of making an excuse, you try to make a solution. And I don't know if I'm correct, so I'll have to lean back on you, Otis, to know the accuracy in that statement. But I really do believe that we are kind of hardwired to make excuses. And so while I'm giving everybody out there an excuse, our natural tendency is to save energy. And so if you go back to our primate stage, we want to save energy. So if there is free time that we don't need to do something, or that we think we don't need to do something, because we're hardwired to be lazy in a positive way, we say, nothing, I'm going to sleep. I'm going to curl in. That's why Netflix is such a danger, right? Because it's like, oh, I can rest. Right. And I mean, I watch my fair share of Netflix shows, so I'm not dogging on anybody. But the point of the matter is that because we're hardwired to be lazy, that means excuses are very close and easy to come up with because they're part of that hardwiring. And now if we're really good at that and we let ourselves practice that, now instead of making solutions, we're really good at making excuses. And so then we don't take action in a positive way. Now, I will get back to you, Otis, to give me whether I was on key or not with that training. But here's the thing. Beyond the excuses, I will go ahead and let you know that your greatest fear out there listening is that you're going to suck. You're going to do this thing and you are so afraid that you're going to suck. So you'd rather come up and make excuses about why you're going to suck and why you can't do it and how it's going to take too long, rather than just saying, I'm going to suck. And every one of you have something that you're good at, whatever it is, cooking, baking, maybe it's digging a hole. It doesn't matter what you're good at. You all have at least a few things that you're good at. And whatever they are, you sucked when you started. And you know that. And you can look back at it in the past and go, wow, yeah, I really sucked at it when I started. But over time, you'll get a little bit better. And with a little bit more time, you'll get a little bit better. Mm-hmm. And with a little bit more time, you might become a master. And somebody might say to you, wow, you're a master at this. And you'll know you're a master when you look back at yourself and you go, I'm not a master at this. There's so much I don't know about this thing that I could go on and on about what I don't know. And all of a sudden, everybody else around you is looking at you going, yeah, you're a master at that. And you're thinking, I've just got started. So I think that really, if you can overcome that fear of sucking, you're gonna suck. You're gonna be bad. And at the point when you get really good and graduate from college and you're winning everything and you turn pro and you don't make a cut for 2.5, 3 years in the pro ranks, you're going to have to go back and realize, gosh, I thought I knew something. I thought I was good. Mm-hmm. And now I get to really learn. Now I get to really understand what I didn't know. And I guess that's why people say you got to do what you love, because if not, you won't make it through that.
Yeah, that's awesome. And back to your toss back to me, I would say, yeah, that's part of it. It's a risk mitigation, taking away the fear of failure, and then there's other things that we do, depending on the situation. Really, when you talk about rehearsing, practicing, that you do to where there is no thought. It's no different than anything else. High level of performance, that if you practice it enough and you work on it and you work on it, it becomes there is no thought to it. Mm-hmm. Even if there are choices in the action, there is still no thought, because you've been trained to recognize the indicators that arrive that tell you, okay, if these things are going on, then I should do this. And you've trained so much in that situation, in those situations. That's the higher the performance you get, the more you train on those basics, and the better you get at the basics, so that the fundamentals become, in every situation, become habitual without any thought. And I'll use a naval aviator reference that I grabbed onto a number of years ago to help me understand it, and that's the rule of three when they're coming into the aircraft carrier to land. And you know that they only get three. They train on, do these three things. If this happens, do this. If this happens, do this. And if this happens, do this. Because our mind can only get around three opportunities, three options, and keep it happening in that split second that it has to happen. Mm-hmm. And when you start to think about, and Camden, we talked about this for years when we were coaching rugby together, and I'm sure you've carried on some of it in the rule of three of how you perform on the pitch. And so, yeah, there's a lot to that. And I think it's that you're 100% right. Our fear is failure, because if we fail at attempting at something, then we've wasted that energy at doing it. And I think that's the primal instinct of survival is, well, I don't want to fail. And yeah, there might be some, what will other people think? But I think you hit the nail on the head. It's a caveman survival instinct of, if I go out to hunt and I don't get anything, then I've wasted all that energy to hunt. So
there's
no
something I
question.
wanted to dive in deeper there on the failure, because I don't think we've actually ever covered this, Dad. You talk a lot about how with your military transition, it was really difficult to get used to that word being used so commonly in the business world. Fail forward, fail often, that kind of stuff. But you talking about the fear of failure there has me thinking. There's this interesting thing, and you could apply this in business. I'll stick with the military example there, but you talk about the reason you don't like the word failure is because in your profession it meant somebody was dying, somebody was dead. If there was a failure, something really, really, really bad happened. But then removing that fear of the failure, there's this little dance kind of balance that happens. Sorry, thinking of Michael, I guess. I have a little shake of the hips there, but there's this dance kind of push and pull that happens, which is you want to be conscious of the failure and how bad that potential failure is, while also not letting that black hole affect your performance. The business example would be, I know I've got everything riding on this, and I know I need to make this happen in order to keep the business going so I can stay as an entrepreneur and not go get a job at McDonald's. That's a lot of weight. If I think about that weight, I'm probably not going to perform near as well if I don't. Could you talk some about maybe just specifically in the Green Beret experience of how that kind of balance works, Dad?
I'm not really sure what you meant by that. I mean, in that Green Beret experience, the training and the fear of failure, is that what?
Not so much the training, thinking more in the actual performance of, how bad failure is, but you also know you can't look at the failure. Basically, you have to not think about it, because if you think about it, then that kind of self-fulfilling prophecy starts.
Yeah, I think it's the training comes in of the focus on the mission, and you don't think about. You have so much, you're performing at such a high authenticity of yourself and such confidence in yourself and your team and the capacity and capability to execute the mission that it never crosses your mind in that point. I think that's goes back to what you were saying, Michael, in that sense of, you're mitigating. Truly, that's what you do, and in business also. You mitigate the risk of failure by going through and practicing, rehearsing. You do the same thing in business. You don't necessarily, people don't rehearse writing proposals. However, you do the research and gather the information. What's your experience on that, Michael?
I think you do rehearse writing the proposals, but you rehearse it by trying it and then it working or not working. And then you do it again and it works or it doesn't work, and you do it again because you have to do it again to get through and make it through that phase of time where maybe it isn't working. If you suck at writing a sales letter, you can't get good at writing a sales letter unless you write it over and over and over again until you get it better. And I can't even say right, but better. And it happens in every scenario. If you're on a sales call, you may think you're really good, but you may look at the end of the month and have got no sales. You have to look back and go, what did I do wrong? I've got to learn to sell better. And that just comes through the iteration. So I think it's just a difference in when we get to practice. And I think what I hear you describing is what I would call choreography. That's what we relate it to. Is for the Green Berets, they had already failed, and I mean this in the most respectful way possible. They had already failed because somebody had already died, and so they had already failed, and because of those failures where somebody died, they made the choreography that they used to train you and future generations. They made that choreography very specific to avoid that failure. And then it continues to get better and reiterated in better and better ways. So the choreography that you're doing when the Marines go through their Hell Week, that is so choreographed. It is so mapped out. They know exactly what they're trying to do, and they know people have died, and that's why it has to be this way. And so it's just been iterated over and over again, and they did fail. The lucky part for most of us, most of your listeners, is that we're not in a life or death situation. We are not in a scenario where somebody's going to die. And the problem is that we treat it that way. We treat it as if we're going to try this thing. We're going to take a risk. We're going to do this thing, and we're going to treat it in our brains like we're going to die. There's this thing called a complex equivalence, and it is so rampant, especially in today's world. And I would imagine in the military, they try to avoid letting you think this way. But a complex equivalence is simple. I think, that pen just hit me in the hand. Okay, great. Now, what does that mean? Well, most people go, oh, that means my pen dropped on the floor. That's it. But somebody that wasn't in control of using a complex equivalence, a string, would say, well, that pen hit me in the hand. My hand is going to get bruised. If my hand is bruised, then that means I can't use my hand. And if I can't use my hand, then I can't write my sales letter. And if I can't write my sales letter, I'm not going to know what to sell. And if I can't sell, and they just keep going down the path. So A didn't just equal B, A equaled C, D, all the way back to Z. And all of a sudden, that hitting my hand, and they have an anxiety attack because they made this complex assumption that if that happened, I'm going to die. And they don't think that. And if you would address it with them, they would say, well, that's not what I'm thinking. But in the background, their brain's going, yes, you are. That's exactly what you were thinking, right? You're not going to eat because you didn't sell something on your call. But I just hit my hand with a pen. What does that have to do with anything? That's called a complex equivalence. And we all do it all the time in all sorts of different situations. And the goal really is, in many ways, what they trained you to do in the military, which is let's avoid that and let's teach you how to interrupt that pattern so that you can stay, like you said, with your eyes on the prize, with your eyes on the task at hand, just the mission. Stop doing all that other crazy crap that our brains are really good at doing. Just hang out with a bunch of high school girls for a few minutes. I have 4 girls and 1 boy. You hang out with a bunch of high school, middle school girls, and you can hear them do these complex equivalents, and they will project out into the future these crazy scenarios. And then they go and they say, I'm stressed and depressed and I have anxiety. And you're like, that's because it didn't cut off immediately. We have to do a better job of that. Our school system, I mean, I hate to get on a rant on that, but our school system really sucks because they help that scenario instead of saying, hey, let's teach that out. We don't have to do that. Anyway.
Yeah,
I'll agree with that. Go ahead.
Yeah.
You got a question on that, Cam? Because I want to stay on that subject.
Yeah, no, I just wanted to add there, talking about that, it's the narrative part of our brain. We love telling the story backwards. And telling the story backwards is so easy. And then we take that same framework and we try to tell the story forwards. And it never freaking works. I was on a coaching call just the other day, coaching with, some college students who are not much better off than those high school girls they're talking about. And they were talking, one of them was talking about the summer class that she's struggling with. And we kind of went in and there's these layers of assumption where it was this summer class. If I don't pass this, then I can't take the next class, which means that my fall was messed up, which means my spring is messed up, which means I can't graduate on time. Now, I was kind of like, whoa, stop right there. 1, can you graduate later? Yes. 2, what do you want to do with your life? And she's really into oceanography. And it's just like, okay, if you couldn't go to school, if you didn't have a job, you couldn't do anything, and you were just a bum on the beach counting the dolphins, you think you'd be happy? And she's like, yeah, I'd still be happy. And I was like, all right, why are we freaking out then? There's no need to freak out. Like, all of these things don't matter when you're really, like, it's that desire to tell that story forward. Yeah, I'll throw it back to you, Dad.
Yeah, well, you know what you reminded me of, and I didn't hear that phrase used, but I was doing a lot of research on pain management, and there's a great TEDx, and I'll have to dig it up so Camden can put it in the notes, but it's an Australian guy. He talks about going on a hike, and he's gone on these hikes all the time, and he feels the brush against his, because he's wearing shorts, feels the brush against his leg, doesn't think anything about it, keeps walking. And then one day he's hiking and he feels the brush against his leg and he keeps walking, and all of a sudden this immense pain comes, and it was whatever that super venomous snake that kills you, the two-step brown snake or whatever it is in Australia, which the list of things that can kill you in Australia is exhaustive. Yeah, surprised there's anybody alive in that on that continent.
Explains
But
the population.
yeah, exactly. Population control, probably. But then he goes in this whole thing about, we're going to the hospital, barely alive, and all of these sort of things, and surviving. And he recovers months later, and he goes out for a hike, and he feels a brush against his leg, and he's like, ah! And he jumps up, and he's like, oh my god, oh my god! And he looks down. There's just a piece of strip. There's just a stick and a brush again. But his pain and survival instinct went back to that memory of that event, and it's
Right.
as I've explained it, it's not quite the same as the complex equivalence. But
I got another layer there, though, because I think I could tie that together. We had a conversation with my older sister, Dr. Sierra Batterton, on the show talking about pain once. And one of the things that is really interesting when you talk to people like that, and doctors and PTs, about pain, is how, like, when you start to define pain, it gets really weird. Because pain is all, by the nature of it, physiologically, it's all in your head. Doesn't mean there's not something happening, but all of the actual pain is in your head. And one of the things she talked to me about, which is really interesting, Dad and I, yours way worse than mine, but both have bad backs, deal with chronic pain, those kind of things. And she was talking about how it's like, and actually, I'll throw this to you, Dad. If you are somebody with chronic pain, do you think you're more or less sensitive to pain?
I think you're more aware of it, so I guess that would mean you're more sensitive to it.
Yes, exactly. And that's what it is a lot of people think they're tougher because they constantly have the pain. But what it really is that you get that little bit of a trigger and you kind of go through that route of the complex equivalence, and you let it assume that my back is bad. I get a little twitch. That twitch isn't near as bad as it was years ago when I would have gotten that twitch because I got the surgery and it's all fixed up. But my brain goes, oh, that twitch means that my disc isn't working, which means that my sciatica is going to act up, my leg is going to start doing this again, and all those kind of things. And of course, then the real complex equivalence is then I start thinking about my life after that, and, going down that rabbit hole, right? But it all goes back to it, the pain, and what do you let that pain mean? So I think you're really, really spot on with that one, actually, Dad.
Yeah, I'd love to get you in on that, Michael, and that particularly the NLP and how the NLP thought process, that not technology, I guess technique.
Well, it is. It really is. It's technology of the mind.
Okay. Yeah.
It's interesting because that same hardwiring has an interesting, well, I don't know, we could call them brothers and sisters. Not only are we hardwired to be lazy, but we're also hardwired for our own benefit, right? Lazy in our own benefit. So I'm not saying lazy in a bad way, but in a good way. It was how we survived. The other way we survived was by telling stories. And so the combination of being lazy and telling stories, and everybody wonders why people get addicted to Netflix. Well, there you go. It's a perfect combination.
It's the modern day campfire, right?
Exactly. So people would be as lazy as they could, save and conserve as much energy as they could, and then go out and use as much of it to get food so that they could survive. It's primal. We built it in. It's hardwired. Then they would sit around while they were being lazy on purpose and recovering energy to go do that again, or to farm, or whatever they needed to do to survive. And they would tell stories about the things that were negative. Think about that, about the things that were negative that the future generations needed to look out for. So they spent all their time being lazy for their benefit and telling and talking about things that were negative for their benefit, both of which were for their survival. And if there's one thing that we have kept as humans and we're really good at, is we are hardwired to be lazy and to tell negative stories. And we still think that they're for our survival. And yet I mean, I know the planet has a long way to go, and I know there's a lot of humans still suffering, and I get that. But a majority of the planet can eat and have information, and we don't need to do that anymore. And so you would think we would be out of that space. But it's so hardwired in that we have to stand guard at the door of our mind so that we can continue to keep ourselves from telling stories that are negative and thinking that it's for our own survival, which in most cases it is not. It is not in that space. And I would imagine even in your experience in the military, there are probably so many things that go down that you can't allow yourself to get into the negative space of what that would potentially mean, because if you do, you're not focused on the mission. You're not focused on what needs to get done. You're focused on what could happen, and then somebody dies. and that's no good. So you can't afford to tell stories. And that's what's so, I think that's what's so scary to people when they watch those documentaries about the training of these elite soldiers, is they see these stories of these elite soldiers and they go, I can't do that, right? Because it's going against some of their natural tendencies, which is, I want to be lazy. Swimming through the beach tide doesn't look like lazy to me, and I need to tell negative stories. And if you tell negative stories, people die, right? So they look at these things and they go, "Oh no, oh no, 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 I'm out." Right? But it happens to us, and I think you referred to this earlier, Otis, about it happens to us in business. And it's so hard to stand guard at the door of your mind and keep yourself from creating these complex equivalences, telling negative stories about the past of what you hadn't been able to do up to this point, and about the future of what happens if you make one wrong move. And that's really where the key is, and that's where having these little reminders. I certainly am not no master of it, but that's why I have these on my desk. That's why they're little teeny pieces that move around on my desk, so I have to touch them, I have to read them, I have to remember that I am enough. I will always be enough, and I always have been enough every step of the way. I haven't always been my best, but I've always been enough. And I think that's really cool. I mean, I see those, and I always ask myself, could I make it through Hell Week? Could I make it through that? I wonder if I could make it through that. I wonder if I could handle the choreography that those drill sergeants created to make sure these men stayed alive. I don't know. I ask myself, and there I go telling the stories.
I'd be curious, talking about the caveman brain part of us that loves the stories, and especially that by that negativity bias in the storytelling as well. I think that's really interesting. Could you talk some about, maybe in your experience, of trying to rewire that? And like I was talking about, telling the story forward, telling positive stories, that kind of approach of like using that narrative mechanism that we are so freaking good at, and trying to rewire it to be positive rather than so negative all the time.
Right. I think that one of my old mentors used to always say, he probably still does, he used to say, change can happen in a New York minute. And there's so much evidence for that. A car accident, a plane crash, whatever it is, you winning the lottery, you going back to being poor within 2 weeks, which is the average of winning the lottery. No, it's actually 2 years. So be careful what you wish for if you're wishing for the lottery, because you don't know how to handle it. You didn't earn that money. You didn't gain that money. You don't know what to do with that money. You don't know how to keep that money. So most people that win the lottery are back to where they were financially within, I think the statistic is 2 years. You can look it up on Google and find out what it is, but it's pretty staggering. So making that change, making that adjustment, I think is what we so often love about transformational stories. It's because there wasn't a single moment, but we always attribute it to that single moment. There was a journey. Frodo went on a journey in Lord of the Rings. Luke went on a journey in Star Wars. All of the best shows, Heck, Lightning McQueen went on a journey from the start to the finish, and there was a transformation. And there was one moment in all of the films. You think about Lightning McQueen and Cars, and there was one moment at the end of the show, and they're racing, and he's gonna win, and his other guy spins out, crashes in the side, and he stops before the finish line. And everybody that sees that show thinks that that was the minute. Baloney. That wasn't the minute. The minute that he changed was this journey from when he found himself locked up in little, whatever springs, Radiator Springs, right? Yeah. And he had to figure out who he was. And what I think so many of us are trying to do is we want the magic pill. We want the magic bullet. We want that thing that's going to change us right now. We want to believe that I'm going to go be a Navy SEAL and it's going to happen because I said so. That's not true. They go through weeks and weeks and weeks, and then they finish with Hell Week, and they didn't just change like that. They changed over this incredible journey. And so what I would say is that while you might recognize it in an instant, you're probably going to have to live it and stop being afraid of sucking. You're gonna suck. You probably do suck right now. I'm sorry. And it might not be at everything, but it's okay that you suck. It really is okay. We all suck at something, and we are all really good at something. And some of us are still trying to be really good at something. And there might be a moment, and everybody talks about it, you need your epiphany bridge script. You need that moment when you found out. Well, yeah, okay. So Lightning McQueen, I know I'm using a cartoon, but so he decided at the finish line when he didn't cross over. Maybe he decided that was where his transformation was, but it took him weeks and weeks and weeks to get to that point where he actually knew who he was. And then all of a sudden, the transformation took place. So what I think that you guys have to actually get out and live. It's about the experience. When we talk about choreography, when the military talks about the training that they do and they create that choreography, when a business creates its choreography, the choreography is not there so that you can skip the line and win the lottery and be right back to where you were in 2 years. The choreography is there so that you can go through the process and create an experience, not only for you, but create an experience for your clients and maybe even the team that is supporting you getting there. Because that's what happened. Lightning McQueen had a team. They showed up. They were in the pit. They were all the people that he learned the lessons from so that he knew to stop at the finish line. That's what we need, right? And we have to create that experience. And the best way to create that experience is by creating choreography that allows that experience to be brought out of you, that allows the Navy SEALs to become who they are, that allows the Rangers and the Green Beret to become who they are, because they weren't that when they got there. And some of them even get to Hell Week and they're still not that, and they usually weed them out. According to the TV show. I don't know how that works, but that's the thing. We need to create great experiences. And we've all been to a show. We've all been to a dance show, maybe a recital for our kids, maybe a Broadway show, a Vegas show, and it sucked. And you walked out and went, wow, I'll make sure to tell my family not to pay money for that. And that's because, unfortunately, the choreography sucked. It wasn't the people in it. They were all great. But the choreographer really sucked it up. And that happens. And we've all had bad choreographers. We've all had that in our world, right? But I think that's it. I think that forget the magic bullet, forget it's going to happen in this transformation. You might recognize it in a New York minute, but you're going to have to live it. And I'm sorry, you're just going to have to live it. That's what we're here for, the experience of the whole thing. We're here to experience it. We're not here to think about tomorrow. We're not here to lament over the past. We are here for right now. That's why I wrote a book called Every Minute, right? The book is called Every Minute. Why? Because there's this little cool sweet spot right on the edge of the wave. And that's why surfers are so addicted to riding the wave. You could get eaten by a great white shark. We just sighted one. That's okay. Look at that wave. I got to get out there. Right? And they're like, I'll do it anyway. And that you hear them talk and you're like, you're crazy. They're great white sharks here to mate in the area where you're surfing. They're like, it's all right. They probably won't eat me. I'm not food. That's what they think. That's what they talk about. But they're there to live every minute. And every minute isn't the one now because you just missed it. You just missed it. If you're thinking about living now, you missed it. It's gone. It's only his story or her story, however you want to say it, right? But it's gone. So every minute is the one just in front of you. And we experience as dancers, as surfers, in every activity that we love to do, there is that moment right in front of now where when you get on that wave, it's like, man, this is good. That's why I'm here. That's the experience. That's why I want to do this. And so many people go, well, I've never felt that way. I want to be in that space. I want to be in the zone. And you're like, okay, tell me what you think about on a regular basis. And they spend all their time thinking about the past or all their time thinking about the future. And you go, well, that's why. That's why you can't get in the zone. That's why you can't be there. Sorry, you are a loser. You suck. You're never going to be able to do it. Yeah, see, that doesn't sound right? It's just, hey, let's get your thoughts and let's take them from back here and go like this and get you to just in front of right now. Anyway, that's my rant. Sorry about that.
No, it's a well-placed.
It's a good rant.
And it, because it's one of the way I like to say that, because I believe the same thing, is that the past is the past, cannot be changed. You get to choose whether it's a schoolhouse or a prison.
Right.
And the future is unknown. So what you do in the present is what enables you to create the future you want. And yes, you are exactly right. The present moment was just gone. There it goes again. Whoop, there it is. So if you are not walking in the present moment forward, then yeah, it's gone. You just missed that opportunity. There it goes. Boop, there it was again. Oh, I saw it. There, gone. We have to be in that moment of continuing to learn, continuing to develop, and continuing to learn brings me to what did I learn? And I learned a new phrase, and I'm just going to make me sound really, really smart when I use it. And that's I got to look at it again, make sure I get it right. But that is the complex equivalence. I can start to act like I'm somebody that might know something with the complex equivalence and how we add into the, oh my gosh, this just happened. And because I did this, the victim mentality, I like to put it too, because I did this, I won't be able to do this. Well, there goes my great grandchild's future,
Right.
because I screwed up that sales call. So, Camden, how about you? What'd you learn?
A lot. And I got one I'm going to throw out real quick before my main one, but just of what, Michael, what you were just saying of, talking about that 1 minute in front of you. I think that is such a better way of looking at it, because people always talk about like be present. And I never really identified what the problem was with that, but it's exactly what you're talking about. It's like when you think right now, you're kind of automatically thinking just right behind what just happened, right? And so by thinking not all the way ahead, but just 1 minute ahead, it kind of tricks you into thinking what is really the present. So I love that little bit of reframing of it. I think that's awesome. The other piece for me that I thought was really interesting, talking about the negative stories. I heard there was a No Stupid Questions episode. Folks, if you don't know the show, I'm sure we talked about it enough, but Stephen Dubner and Angela Duckworth, awesome show. But they talked about why do we feel the need to like share celebrity deaths and those kind of things? And they talk about it a lot of, it's like the same kind of thing you were saying, Michael, of, it feels like there's this negative thing that we have to share with the rest of the tribe. Otherwise the negative thing is going to spread. And I think there's this really interesting thing of recognizing why we do that. Cause there's some really sick versions of it, especially if you talk social media, like talk literally a celebrity death. The things you see and all these people post, like, you don't know any of these people. No one knows them, but it's like, I have to go tell people. If I hear about some random person that died, I've got to call you, Dad, and say, hey, did you know that such and such? And we'll go, dang, that's terrible. And for some reason, we crave that moment there. And it's that caveman brain that you were talking about, Michael. So that was really interesting to me, kind of a full circle moment on that half thought that I had heard a while back.
Michael, how about you, man? What'd you learn?
You said this and it really hit a chord for me. Focus on the mission. And it doesn't have to be a military mission. It could be your personal mission. I'm on a mission right now to educate the world by helping it become smarter and more intelligent. Not just one or the other, because they're two different things. And it's so easy to not focus on the mission, but I can just, all I could see is you like on some ops mission or something as a Green Beret, and just, the, the crap's hitting the fan, everything's going wrong. And you guys are just like, focus on the mission. We're going to accomplish that. And to me, I think that's huge, man. I love it. Focus on the mission. That's what we got to do.
Awesome. Michael, how do folks find you to learn more about what you got going on?
Oh, the best place to go find some more about what we do at Business Choreography is bizchoreo.com, bizchoreo. Can't miss it.com. You can find out more about business choreography. And we also have a podcast, which is also called Business Choreography. So you can check us out there and learn more about what we're up to. Anyway, that's probably the easiest way.
What's the name of your book again?
It's called Every Minute. You can find it on Amazon. So
awesome. Michael, it's been great having you today, man. Really enjoyed diving into some choreography and how that sets us up for success in life.
I appreciate it. Thank you so much for having me on the show. It's always great to have these fun conversations, and I appreciate you letting me go on a few rants here and there and and talk. But to all of you guys listening, I'm so thankful that you guys are here listening to the message that Cam and Otis are sharing with you. They're doing an incredible job to bring you guys the best of the best information, and I appreciate you too, Cam and Otis. Thank you so much for having me on the show and taking the time to produce a show like this. I know it takes a lot of work and effort behind the scenes. People don't realize how much it is. I have a podcast, so I do know, and I value your time and your effort to bring this to life and to get it out there for people. It really makes a big difference. So thank you guys for doing that.
Thanks, Michael. Camden, run us out.
All right. Thank y'all for listening to today's episode of 10X Your Team with Cam and Otis. And a special thanks to our guest, Michael Johnson, for joining us today. Remember, you can watch full episodes of the show on YouTube at 10X Your Team. And if you enjoyed today's episode, please make sure to pass along to other lifelong learners in your tribe so that they can enjoy it too. Follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. As always, the full archive of episodes available at www.10xyourteam.net. Thanks again. We'll see y'all next time.